Hey guys, it's Dr. Mary Helen Hensley, and I'm talking to you smack in the middle of my workday. Why is that? Because my last patient just canceled because they're home with COVID, along with their spouse, and along with the people that they went out with at the weekend. Now, the interesting thing is all of these folks were allowed to go out, and they went into a pub in town, and the pub only took people who were vaccinated. And so all of them are now at home with COVID and COVID positive. So what's really interesting about that is that the HSE has just put out, actually government.ie, the new legislation for the robust boost of the hospitality industry that's coming up now. And so they have now declared that all public access places like restaurants and pubs will be required to look for proof of immunity. Now, this to them means a digital EU passport. And let me tell you why so many people that you might know, or you might be one yourself, are going absolutely freaking crazy. Because we feel like we're living in La La Land. We can't believe this is actually happening. So the finger is being pointed at those who have chosen not to vaccinate against COVID-19. Now, we are all marked as, the unvaxxed or anti-vax. I happen to be vaccinated because my parents had me vaccinated as a child, so I'm certainly not unvaxxed. I haven't vaccinated since, and as an adult, I'm 52 years old. I didn't vaccinate against the swine flu or with the flu or with the COVID virus because, I have a really strong, healthy immune system that is kicking ass and doing great, and that's my choice. But the interesting thing is how the term immunity is being used. What is immunity? Well, it's the ability of the body to defend itself against foreign objects. And what's being thrown around here is the idea that someone who is vaccinated, the actual wording now on this legislation that just passed and that is now coming in, is that proof of immunity must be shown. So they are now equating immunity with a COVID passport. And this is absolutely a complete travesty because it's simply not true. They are now stating that those who are vaccinated against COVID have immunity. And based on the story that I just told you about my empty room here because my patient couldn't show up because everybody's down with COVID, even though they're all vaccinated and they're all home and they all attended a place where only vaccinated were allowed, somehow it's being turned and focused on the fact that the unvaccinated are the ones who are actually causing this. And it's got to stop, guys. You think we're banging on and being ridiculous. Yet another thing passes today. This is Amendment 2 to the Health Act 2021 that's just gone through, and it is stating that in order to enter a public place, I must show proof of immunity, and that proof of immunity being an EU certificate COVID vaccine pass, which states then that with a COVID vaccination, I am immune to COVID. And if you haven't been watching the news and you haven't seen all the people who are being hospitalized who are vaccinated with COVID, and I hate that, I'm sorry, I think it's awful. But that's not the issue, and it's never been about the vaccine, guys. It's about the fact that right under your noses, yet another thing gets passed today, and everybody's like, well, sure, I have mine, so, good that you have yours, but what about the people around you who chose differently, right? Well, that's your right not to get to go anywhere, not under legislation where they're completely misusing the term immunity. So my body, I had COVID and I survived it and I kicked its butt. And so I have an immunity by having naturally contracted the virus. And then you have passive immunity, which can be built up over a period of time where, somebody gets their immunizations. And so it's interesting because immunization and vaccination have become kind of interchangeable at the moment when they're actually not, or inoculation. Just because that you've had a jab for COVID-19, even if you've had two, even if you've had a booster, doesn't mean you're immune to it, nor does it mean that you can't pass this on. And people are like, oh, well, I know. Yeah, well, if you know, then you need to say something, because what's happening now is your friends and your family and the people that you go to, people who come to me looking for services and all, we are categorically being shut out of every place that those who have taken a vaccine are allowed to go based on them having an immunity and those of us who didn't use the COVID vaccine not having an immunity. I have positive antibodies. My daughter has positive antibodies. We tested for it. Do you know, like, what the heck? This is why we feel like we're going nuts. And so, you know, the more this carries on, you know, I hope you guys enjoy Christmas and have fun in the pubs, and you get to watch the people who are falling down left, right, and center with COVID, because that's not what's happening here. That's not what the vaccine does. It doesn't provide immunity. It lessens the symptoms and lessens the chance of death for the person who took the inoculation. Let me say that again. The COVID vaccine lessens the chances for dramatic symptoms and the chances of death by COVID by having taken the inoculation. That's what it does. It does not provide immunity. It doesn't mean that just because you're on this side of the queue and you're socially distancing in order to buy your coffee, that when you cross over the invisible line and you sit down and you unmask and you're laughing away with your friends drinking your coffee, that you're suddenly immune to COVID. And this is the misconception that people are having. And I, as a doctor who am sitting in here watching people come in and out and tell me about their, you know, they're double vaccinated and they take their mask off and they're talking, well, you don't get this. Oh, well, do you want me to put it back on? No, I'm not wearing one either, and that's my choice. Whether you wear one or not, that's your choice. I couldn't care less if you want to wear a mask or not. I couldn't care less. But don't use terminology such as, I can't go into a public establishment without being able to prove immunity, when having a COVID-19 vaccine does not prove anything other than you have taken a shot that's going to lessen your symptoms or chances for death. Period. Okay? So let's pay attention to what's going on here, because, you know, that just came out today. You know, there's reports on the radio now about the fact that the hospital waiting rooms are getting more and more crowded with people who are presenting with non-COVID upper respiratory illness. Okay, do you know, like we used to call that the flu. Yeah, it's just, it's gone out of control, and it is your responsibility. And just because you can get into a restaurant or into the cinema or into a pub under the guise that you have a false immunity to something, I'm like, you're taking your life into your own hands as well. And then turning around and pointing the finger at those who are doing it differently, saying that somehow we're the scapegoat, somehow we're the ones who are making this a problem. According to Irish statistics, if 90% of the people in the country are immunized against COVID, and the rest of us can't get into a pub or can't get in to sit down in a restaurant, how the hell are we spreading it? So, yeah, that's today. This is serious stuff. So it's the absolute and utter misuse. And you've got the President of America, you know, saying what an absolute travesty, and the people who are spreading misinformation are killers, and it clenches the teeth. Killers. I'm like, guys, are you for real? You want to talk about spreading misinformation? It's getting the general public to nod and agree when you completely misuse the term immune, and you set legislation up that now allows the general tax-paying public not to enter an establishment unless they can prove immunity. Someone who's had a COVID vaccine cannot approve immunity any more than I can. So you sit with that for a little while, and you wonder why those of us out there are freaking out, because there's another one gone. And hope you're all well, and I'll keep you posted as to what's going on out here. Peace out.